Through more than 2 decades at Kenner and Hasbro, Aaron built worlds, told stories, and designed toys for some of pop culture's biggest names, including Transformers, Batman, Star Wars, and more. Join him as he explores the archives and tells you the stories of the creative process behind your favorite toys. This is the Toy Armada with your host, Aaron Archer.
So we open up this segment with a editor note. Hi, my name's Protoman, and you're listening to the Toy Armada with Aaron Archer. Aaron will be with us in a moment. You are listening to part 2 of a 2-parter segment. It was originally all one giant segment, and we talked about the creating of Transformers to sell stories with Vector, Prime, and Thundertron. And then we found ourselves talking for almost a good hour just about the industry and how to keep it fresh and how to keep ideas fresh and old ideas. And we went down this huge rabbit hole that ended up almost being a whole different segment in itself. So what you're listening to right now is part 2 of that segment. So enjoy that. There's probably not going to be many images on the screen this one because we're just talking the business on a deep inside baseball level. And I hope you enjoy it. It's a really good listen, and hope to see you guys at TFCon Toronto in a week or so as of this recording. It's something where it's that late stage creativity where they go, well, we've done everything we can at this point.
Well, I'll add to that just because you brought it up, and I hope this comes off the right way. We were doing all that creativity within the team. Okay, we were organically developing all that stuff. Had the budgets, had the people, had the corporate backing. The toy people aren't the same people doing that now. That gets done with this writers group in LA, right? That did the Beast movie.
The West Coast Hasbro, as I like to call it.
Yeah, and so what might be right for the story might not ever get down granular to, well, we got this unique toy opportunity that if we build a crazy story and then go tell it, it'll really help the whole reason we're making toys, period. I'm going to go off on a bit of a diatribe. I do not like the top-down model of toy design as if the movie, just follow the movie and then you make products. It's like, well, the toys themselves have to have unique play and fun to them, and that can be done through scale, through detail, through feature, through paint application for realism. And it's all become very lazy, and there's that ability to create a character like Thundertron that then you go figure out the storytelling needs because you need a character that, that doesn't happen anymore. You'll just get told, oh, here's the character, and, well, you don't know how to make the toy better. We were doing it in the building. We were driving all that and then working with partners to massage it to its best possible form. Now there's a little bit more of there's 2 teams that aren't allowed to talk to each other as openly or as based on different needs, and it's just, I think, very different. And that's why they're stuck in nostalgia, because they're probably not allowed as easily to just randomly make a big character that sits into this fantasy without screwing something up.
And I'd have to agree with you. The thing that's going on with current Transformers right now is that they've forgotten the process that has made it successful, which was, and even if it was not intentional initially, which is, you had the Diaclone Microman, throw a little, Popey Bandai. You took those toys, you made a story around those toys. Beast Wars, the toys were 95, and then they built the show around that afterwards. There was initial ideas, but Mainframe Entertainment and Bob Ford and Bob Skir and all those guys, they looked at it and then built a story around that, around those toys. And that was always the process that was very successful. Here's the sandbox, here's the toys in the sandbox, now tell the story with that. What's happening now, and you could see it that it's its biggest weakness right now currently, is the 2 biggest selling brands for Transformers right now and it has never been like this before, are the ones that have nothing to do with current media. That's what's crazy.
Yeah.
During your era, Armada was the biggest selling main line, and it was also the show on television. Animated was the biggest selling main line, and it was the show on television. Revenge of the Fallen main line is the biggest selling main line, and it's also the movie that's in theaters. The sad thing today is the Rise of the Beast toy line main line itself isn't selling well, and it's the movie in theaters. Earthspark, the show, the toy line is not selling well, and it's the show that represents the fiction in television or on streaming services. But what is the best-selling stuff for the Hasbro brand? Legacy, Nostalgia, and Studio Series, which about 80% of that line is Nostalgia.
Yeah.
It's older movies. It's, hey, remember the Michael Bay movies? Here's the toys. Hey, remember the 86 movie? Here's the toys. So what is selling ridiculously well for Hasbro currently is completely divorced from what is the current media. And that's a big mistake, because if you did it like you said, it's better to create the toys first and then build fiction around it.
Right,
Instead, what's happening is the other way around.
I'm just going to say this once and drop it, but if you have people who want to make toys, they know what to do to make toys sing. If you want to have people just sell stuff, that's where we're at.
Well, that's and it's funny.
You're not making toys; you're making replica, and if people don't want it, then it's not dynamic, it's not interesting, not worth engaging, and it just sits there. Okay,
and that's going back again to Beast Machines, where Beast Machines, you could clearly look at that and go, designs were made first, story was made first, and then toys were an afterthought. Mm-hmm. And look how that worked out. I mean, you might like the show Beast Machines; that's your own personal opinion for listeners, but it's something where you could see how that divorce between those two important entities of how this business works led to, unfortunately, its lack of success, and why Beast Machines was considered a failure, at least in the toy aisle. Ratings and that's a whole other discussion. But, especially for Fox kids before they became Foxbox. But it's something where, to me, that's what's happening right now with Hasbro, is that, and it's so weird because the stuff that's flying off of the shelves. I mean, I stand, and it's not just Transformers. You stand in a toy aisle at Walmart today, and I remember my wife said it too. She was standing with me, and she's like, everything here is our childhood being sold back to us. Yep. Very few of it is new, It's like there's the reissue Ninja Turtles. There's the reissue He-Man. There's the Beyblades that are styled like the old Beyblades, not like the new ones. There's the Transformers, that the ones that are flying off the shelves are based off of characters that came out 2 decades ago.
G.I. Joe.
Not G.I. Joe, yeah. Well, G.I. Joe is practically keeping its nose above water because of the old brand. That what is new about G.I. Joe? That, I mean, they just like, they did a He-Man TV series that didn't do well. But what keeps the He-Man brand alive in the toy aisle is either collaborations with other companies, which create double nostalgia. It's He-Man, but it's also Ninja Turtles, and it's all stylized like that old style. So it's something where, right now, companies are not focusing on new, and that's going to be a big weakness in the future, because nostalgia is fine when you're targeting 20 years in the past, maybe 30. But then when you start trying to target nostalgia for 40 years in the past, 50 years in the past, that's where I worry you then end up with something like Dick Tracy. You end up with something like Flash Gordon, where, those people are still alive, but they're not your monetary audience anymore.
Yeah.
How many boomers, boomers, I don't even know what you would call that generation. How many people went to see that Dick Tracy movie? Let alone that same demo that went out and bought those Dick Tracy action figures.
It's one of my favorite conversations lately. As a first generation Star Wars viewer in the theater, in my 50s now, I'm like, why should my son give a crap about
He won't.
about what my childhood was. But Disney sure wants him to, and he isn't. He has no care in the world about it. And I find it to be funny because it's like exactly your point. Why does my kid need to have the same old shit? They need something new. Create new. Do it good. Make it good.
And that's where, at least in the case, like, because you could look at what's another brand that has that 50, 60, 70-year-old lineage. You look at Marvel. How did Marvel survive that? Because Marvel didn't, like, when it was the 80s and the 90s, they didn't go, we're going to sell you the 1963 X-Men when we're going to make a cartoon. When we're going to make an X-Men movie, we're going to do 1963 X-Men. No, they went straight to Jim Lee 90s. They went new. They went current. And that's what keeps you alive, is you got to be new and current. Transformers, how it will survive is, like right now it's surviving with, hey, remember 1984, 95, 86, 87? But it's going to survive by 10 years from now. It's not going to be able to do that. It's going to have to do new.
Yeah.
And we're already seeing that now. Hey, remember Armada?
Well, there is a certain point. I mean, if you didn't grow up with it, and if it's not, I mean, even if it is super iconic, how many Optimuses do we need? That all look the same. They're just slightly different scales, slightly different gimmick changes, but it's still G1 Optimus.
That's something they need to get over. That has been the elephant in the room for the past, I want to say 12, 13 years now. They got to get over that G1 and it's the G1 style and mild variations of it that we've seen through essentially every brand now. Earthspark, it's that style. Prior to that, Cyberverse, it was that style. When we look at even the movie stuff, people love that Optimus, but how many times could we bring back movie Optimus in that CG and still have it be that flat-nosed truck? Like, you can't sell that over and over 50 times. You're going to have to make a new design, which is why, in a lot of ways, it was smart to go with the long nose with the Michael Bay one. Sure, it wasn't as received well, but it sure sold a lot of action figures before they could then go to it.
Let me hide those long legs somewhere.
Yeah. That's where all of it was stored, practically. Anyone who transformed those old figures, the leader classes. But to me, that's always been. Yeah, no,
you're right. There's a balance where you're feeding. You have to feed the new people and at a certain point, if you are trying to engage new people by giving them a tome that they have to understand before they can enjoy the next thing, that's when you start to run into trouble.
Well, that's where this goes back to your son. Imagine your son wants to get into Star Wars today, and the first thing you say to him is, I want you to watch this old movie from 1976, or 79, depending, and I want you to watch this old movie that you might find kind of cheesy, right? Because already there's that extra layer of polish that a younger generation. I mean, we're a weirder generation because while we might have grew up on 80s cartoons, we were also force-fed Hanna-Barbera 60s and Looney Tunes from the 40s and 50s.
The baby boomer stuff we still had to deal with.
Disney, like which one of us didn't watch Bambi or Snow White, which, by the way, 1930s, 1940s, like, but today, it's like to expect that generation that is very in tune with technology and what is fresh, what is new, what is, again, polished. Yeah. And for them to then go back
old is old
and watch some, it's my dad's thing. The old saying, this is like, this isn't your dad's thing. That was always a marketing ploy because your dad's thing is uncool, So it's where they're going to hit a point where, in the case of, like, let's say Star Wars, unless they really reinvent themselves and break away, and that's where Transformers was so lucky that Beast Wars was almost its own thing on top of it being part of the brand, where people could just be part of that generation. There, in the 90s, there is an entire demographic of people that just grew up on Beast Wars.
Yeah.
They don't know Generation 1. It wasn't, and especially back then with the lack of accessibility of the internet, they didn't see those episodes. They didn't watch the 86 movie. They didn't rent the VHS from a video store. All they knew was this CG animal transforming show, and they loved it, and they bought the toys, and they identified with that. And you fast forward 20 years from that point, or 27 now, and they're able to have nostalgia for it. But what is going to be the 20-year mark then? That's why we're seeing Armada throwback products. We're seeing Energon and Cybertron throwback products today, because now they're going, well, how many times could we sell them? Like you said, Gears, Beachcomber, Bumblebee.
I don't know. I've lived through it, as have you, and I actually was a kid in the 80s that had some of these things. So, I don't, at this point, how much better can the next Devastator be?
And this is very important.
How much better can the next
do you
whatever be?
as an adult at 50 need to take your income and put it towards that, which is the biggest, most important thing we have to address, is how are you spending this money? Because it's a company that's selling you nostalgia, but if they're selling it to you and you ain't buying because you already got your fix, like you said, how better is this next Devastator going to be?
Yeah.
And it's something where, like, you bought the HasLab Hiss Tank, because how better was that from the original? Exponentially. But now let me ask you something.
And they threw a bunch of figures in with it.
Yeah, but let me ask you this. 20 years from now, how could you top that? So I think Aaron's never going to buy another another Hiss Tank ever again, because you've pretty much peaked at that point,
Well, at 50, yeah, how many more toy tanks was one?
Well, that's what I'm saying. At let's say 20 years, at 70 years old, Aaron, here's your next Hiss Tank. No, it's not happening. You're retired. You're going to McDonald's to get your free coffee. Like whatever it's going to be. The point being is,
Yeah, well, that's where this, I call it
that's why
replica toys, but it's also nostalgia toys. But replica toys in itself, it's like, it's bland. It's just the picture in 3D. There's nothing to do but pose. And I guess that's something, but that's not going to sustain an industry. It's not going to sustain a collector base. It's not going to sustain these things ongoing.
And that was the weakness of Transformers Prime. If the only thing you're selling is replication, then you're at that, like I said, late stage creativity where that's not going to work.
Prime is weird, because I thought that we had long since learned that transformation alone was not the feature. That was just the cost of doing business. Okay? What we added to that, whether it's spring-loaded or one step or shot something or sounded something or you twisted it in a unique way, that's what we were trying to promote. And Prime has nothing. It's just transforming toys.
The Japanese side of it, they tried to implicate mini-cons and a model element and stickers.
Arms, Micron.
Just because they need that. They need that, because in the land of Japan of gimmicks, and man, they are the land of gimmicks.
Yeah.
Like,
here's our brand new toy line that just transforms, just like it did in 1975.
Well, not only that, here's our new robot toy line that transforms. Oh, by the way, next to our Sentai brand of transforming robots, next to our Gundam brand of transforming robots, next to our
don't forget Diaclone.
Whatever other companies that are smaller that are also doing their own thing. Bakugan has a transforming element to it. So like to go on the shelving in Japan, which they're the kings of marketing and store displays, and you have to have something that says, pick us. Don't pick them, pick us. Because it's all about how you get their money. And this goes back to, like I said, Dick Tracy. They did that big push in the 90s. And it's like no one showed up, both in the toy aisle and, of course, in the movie theater, because the demographic that grew up on Dick Tracy were 70 years old, maybe 60 if we're being nice here. Yeah. Well, and every other kid didn't have a cartoon to attach themselves with, or like even a comic book. Maybe there were some reprints or something, but no. It was a completely different animal by the time that movie had come out.
Yeah. Well, it's the weirdest part about this is that these are they're all kind of corporately held properties. And to them, it's an asset to monetize somehow. So if it was popular once, well, we can make it popular again. And they don't realize, in the case of Dick Tracy, he had some very high tech at the time that made him really unique. Well, even by the 50s, his high tech wasn't that high tech. So by the 90s or now, like who cares? I'm often intrigued by how the Shadow was so big and really meant something nationwide as a character with those radio plays and things. And now, who cares? That the character it almost can never resonate again, is the point I want to say, because it all the 1 + 2 + 7 + 8 that added up to be the number that made that successful can't possibly add up again, because we don't live in a depression. We're not sitting there in front of the one thing just listening and bored of inspiration, and all the things that made that possible does not exist. The way
you can't look to the modern audience. You can't look to investors and say, I am going to make the hula hoop the number one selling toy in the world again.
Yeah.
You can't, because it was lightning in a bottle for that time and place. But you can't make that again. You could recognize it.
You could do nostalgia,
could celebrate it,
but don't act like it's going to be the next. Big deal.
You could reissue the hula hoop under hula hoop brand, Hasbro trademark, whoever owns it, I don't know. But at the same time, you have to recognize the fact that certain things have had their time and place in the world, and you just got to kind of move on. And if you want to keep the Dick Tracy IP, you put out a comic book once every 4 years. You license out, a company that's dumb enough to maybe make a 3-inch action figure here or there, which is, let me tell you something, that happens all the time.
That's
a lot of these companies, in order for them to keep their brands.
Well, I would say it's even, there's, as a creative person, there's the possibility to go, okay, what was the core element of some of these properties? The Lone Ranger, the last guy that held off a thing that thought was dead, that came back and now defends. Okay, how do I do that today? I do not need to see an old dude on a horse with a mask and Indians running around, but tell me that story. Why was that story important? Tell me that in a modern sense somehow. Then I might care. And don't call it the Lone Ranger, but create a new story, and they don't do that. They don't get back to the core essence that they just think they have characters. And the Shadow represented something, Flash Gordon represented something, Tarzan represented something, Zorro represented something, the Phantom, Doc Brown or Bronze, they all represented something.
But all of those that you mentioned, what happened is they just evolved. Like Flash Gordon became Star Wars.
Sure.
And in the case and here's
the Shadow is Batman in a way.
Yeah, the Shadow is Batman, even though Batman kind of existed late 30s, almost at the same time, together with Bob Kane and Fingers. But the point is that it's going to be a hard pill for people to swallow. Something is going to come around and be Star Wars to them, just as Star Wars was to Flash Gordon, meaning that something's going to come around and be the next Star Wars. And Star Wars is still going to exist, just like Flash Gordon is still going to exist, because Disney owns it and they're not going to let people forget. But something's going to come around and be the next Star Wars. And they won't sell themselves as the next Star Wars. It'll just naturally happen. There'll be some kind of IP that'll come around that'll get the attention of people, and it'll be new, it'll be fresh, and more importantly, it'll be important to the demographic that matters, not us.
Well,
I think me in my 40s, you in your 50s.
We were fortunate. Transformers landed on the movie, for a modern generation and all that of kids.
Transformers is so lucky that it reinvents itself.
That too.
Like all those criticisms that we get of, ew, it's too different. Michael Bay movies. Ew, it's the worst ever. Let's threaten Michael Bay with his life. Probably a blessing in disguise.
Yeah.
Because it was so different that it wasn't just, being the same thing. Same thing with Beast Wars. There was people that were screaming, "Oh my God, Truck Not Monkey! It's the end of everything. Worst thing ever to happen to Transformers." It's always, but if anything, that's a good sign. It shows that they're being different, and if it's different, it has the chance to be something else.
You can't
Or if
keep
it's
going
not
down the
different-
same road. You have to eventually turn a corner and see what's down that street. And hopefully you can find success because it's a new street. Hopefully. But you can't keep going down the same road.
And you could build some new restaurants
Yep.
there, some new stores, and then you have new land. It's the analogy is perfect because that's the big, like, you look at what is successful right now with the younger generation, and no surprise, it's all fresh IPs. You know, it's Fortnite, it's Minecraft, it's Bluey. You know, like even the Play School IPs,
or ones that haven't
really
been fully developed, like Magic. You know,
yeah.
There's some older brands that just haven't popped in that epic sense, right? The global
Magic the Gathering to me, I compare Magic the Gathering in the same way to Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings has been around forever. Yeah. It was an institution forever, but it took a Peter Jackson movie to make the mainstream go, oh, yep. That's what I guarantee. I would bet money on this. Prior to 2000, most people didn't know who Frodo was. That name. They probably, like, they saw maybe some people saw a Rotoscope Lord of the Rings cartoon movie many years ago, and then there's the handful of people that actually read the books. But it's something where even something as old as Lord of the Rings, you have to have something that comes around and goes, hey, this was a thing. And Lord of the Rings, luckily, because it had Peter Jackson, a big movie studio, the way it was recorded, it worked out perfectly. Well, but
we're seeing that with Dune.
It could also worked out of bad. It could also been worked out terribly, because there's a lot of times where we have also these other franchises that are based off of old movies or stuff. I don't think Dune turned out as well as maybe the studios thought it would have been.
Well, but at least it's presented in its own unique visual and everything.
Of
that
course.
It can live and just be cool. It's not trying to be,
we'll see what happens. Like a great example that always been a brand that I love, Speed Racer. They tried to reintroduce that to a new audience constantly over and over. Here's something from the 60s, Speed Racer. Then they tried again in the 90s. It didn't work out. Then they tried with the 2010 live action movie, which I enjoy, but I understand why no one showed up, because much like Dick Tracy, while I was that old boomer who loved Dick Tracy, who loved Speed Racer, so I went to see it in theaters, but I understand that most people in the 1960s aren't going to see a movie anymore. You know, like the truth is that, and let's ask this, a little bit of a personal question. When was the last time your mother went to see a movie in theaters?
She would go with me, and we would see reissues of Wizard of Oz and stuff like that.
So she's going to her world.
Yes.
There you go.
Exactly.
That's what I'm trying to say. The last time that even your own mother went to a theater was either going to her own stuff, and that's it. That's it. But she's not going to revisit new. You reach a point where at the age 50 and 60, that whole demo just drops off. Just completely falls off the cliff. And if you're going to try to keep selling to them, you're not going to get as much money. They're retired. They don't have as much disposable income.
And I think it's funny because these people who own these properties, they don't realize that new people aren't coming without significant investment.
Well, they have to just pay attention to what's moving. In a world today where we're all obsessed with analytics and demographics and paying attention, like what made Facebook billionaires and what made all these companies, which is paying attention to numbers, that's all you have to do. All you would have to do is literally hire one of these guys, have them stand at the end of the checkout line at Toys R Us in Canada or whatever would be the major toy distributor in the United States of a Target or Walmart, and see what is moving, what is actually being sold, and who is buying it. And then that would be it, because when you look at the younger demo, like I said before, everything that's doing well right now with a very younger demo is something that's new. It's something that's fresh. It's Bluey. It's Peppa Pig. It's something that it's not this long-standing IP that's been around for 5, 10, 15 years. Well, maybe Peppa Pig now, but...
Well, and like it's often interactive as well. Minecraft, Fortnite, to your point.
Well, we're in a different world. Like I said, you can't sell the hula hoop forever, just in the same way that kids expect now to be able to engage with their products because of video games, cell phones, everything like that.
My kid is the type of guy who... is not in a fantasy world. He likes to play God. So he's playing City Skyline to an nth degree, which is amazing. And then when that isn't enough, he plays Sims to granularly build houses and rooms for the, in his mind, the same city that he just left in the city builder. It's like, oh my God.
But there's the sandbox that they want to play in.
Yeah. He's controlling
no
where the
longer,
roads are, what color the houses are, where the gas station. It's like, wow, okay.
It's different.
How do you compete with that?
Our generation was able to get away with that, where it used to be, we're going to release Battle Beast. Now, I know some of the viewers are going to be like, well, there was episodes in Beast and Transformers and everything, but Battle Beast, as it was marketed here in America, was, here's the toys, you make up the story. And there was a lot of toy lines that were like that.
Muscles.
Army Ants. Muscles is the great. Muscles has a huge franchise, cartoons, movies, everything in Japan. But over here in America, here's these pink figures.
Here's some shit
Go
in a
at
can.
it, kids. Yeah, no articulation. Use your imagination. You can't get away with that today, unless that kid has been programmed already with, that is Darth Vader. This is why I like this all black garbed piece of plastic with a red stick at the end of his hand, because that's all it is at the end of the day. Why would he want to buy it? So if they're going to have to use their own imagination, they're going to go digital. You're not going to give them a garbage can of Muscles or, Monsters in My Pocket or whatever, and expect, or Army Ants or Food Fighters, or, I could go on, Barnyard Commandos, all these brands that had nothing attached to them fictionally. Yeah. And except, hey, kids, buy it and make up your own stories. They're going to go digital. They're going to go play Minecraft. They're going to, like you said, Sims or anything like that. And there's so much of that out there that also, and this is very important to mention, that is free. Cell phone games are free. All of these things are free. That why would the parent want to go out and spend $14.99 on a piece of plastic that might engage them for 5 minutes, maybe?
Yeah.
Maybe.
So the companies have obviously gone with the nostalgia and the replica and get the people that haven't left and hook them forever, I guess. At a certain point,
you can't hook them forever. That's
well.
There's an expiration date on this stuff, because I see it all the time within our own hobby. People get out of it. They've been with it for 20 years, and then they turn 45. They have a family, kids going to college, whatever reason be, because the end conversation we're going to have here is, how are we getting their money? How are we getting their money? How are they, number one, their time, meaning watching the show, which is getting their money because they have to get the streaming service or get that channel. And how do we get them to buy the toys? But if they're paying for college, they don't have time to watch because of babies and kids and soccer practice and everything, you lose that whole demo. And that's why the most valuable demo is always the kids, and literally the cutoff, in my opinion, is 25, where you got enough free time and free money to bleed from them. You get their time, you get their money. And after that, then it starts to dip. And then it really drops off, like I said, 40, 45. That's where it gets a little dicey.
Yeah, we should all have better ways to be spending our money at that time. But I guess I'll also add, I don't know any guy who doesn't spend his mad money on something. More tools for his garage, more gimmicks for his car, more plastic for his shelf. So I think it's a human nature thing too.
The thing is with that is that I agree with you, but those are all, like, especially when it comes to tools and stuff, those are also practical elements.
There are, but I could bring up other things, sports people who have season tickets to a sporting thing, and it's like, my God, you've spent $10,000,
But that's a credit to sports companies and their ability to sell their product and go, you still need this in your life.
Yeah. It is unnatural. These are it's a more modern concept, right? Keeping plastic and keeping nostalgia items.
Adult toy collecting, I have this conversation with my father all the time, and it's evolution of it, of like what causes that. Like this is a phenomenon that in the 90s didn't exist. There wasn't many people over the age of 35 and 40 who were collecting toys. It was a very young concept, but in the same way that who was really, quote, collecting comic books in the 60s and 70s? That was a very 80s kind of idea of, oh, now I'm going to hold on to these books, or holding on to baseball cards.
Sure.
So but now we're entering an era where nothing is physical anymore. Nothing is tangible anymore. So it's something that I'm very curious to see where we go from there, because you're going to have an entire, think about your son's generation, right? So playing video games, right? If he wants to revisit what he did 20 years later, there's no physical game to buy. Maybe he'll find a file he could download on a server and everything like that and relive that experience. That's a very strong possibility.
Well, Dan, I already feel that way at times. Like, I was really big in the first 2 generations of Age of Empires. And yeah, I can go get a special computer and download it now because they've reissued it, but it's still a pain. I'll never play that game again. Yep. It's not on Steam. It doesn't play on Mac. So it's like, okay,
it's something. I'm
thanks for nothing.
I'm on the same page. I'm the same page with you. You have to use DOSBox. You have to play old DOS games and everything like that.
Yeah.
From that
TIE Fighter. We're gonna get TIE Fighter going again.
X-Wing versus TIE Fighter, Lucasfilm 486 era PCs. Totally. No, but that's what I'm trying to say. It's going to be very interesting to see how that pans out for that generation and what they're going to hold on to. Because I already look at early 2000s kids, and they're now coming into their own nostalgia. They're now looking back because and it makes us sound old, but if you were 5 back in 2005, and you're 20 now, and it's like, now you're going like, okay, I'm nostalgic for my things when I was a kid, when I was 5 years old in 2005, and you're seeing them going back, and even them, like, the big thing now with their demographic is lost media.
Yeah.
Because there were shows that they grew up on that were only flash shows that were only on a website that doesn't exist anymore. Yep. Never was put on a DVD or
any
VHS.
Of the kind of vibe they got out of like Club Penguin. Like
all
any
that's
of
gone.
The time with friends and adding characters and building your thing, yeah.
Well, that's
you can't even play the apps anymore. Annika was complaining about her golden Furby that she built up to, and it's like, no, that app is long gone. Like
all those online group experiences that you have to log into a server. Once those servers are gone, that's it, and that experience is gone forever. You can't tell me any video game I ever played between 1983, even though I wasn't playing games in 83, but 83 up until, even the servers of Diablo are probably still kicking around, but like up until 97, 98, all of that still exists. I could still buy it physically or play it. It's still out there. I'm very curious to see the evolution of that for this generation. And again, it's perplexing. It's something I'd love to sit down and just see it. Like, you don't even have to ask questions. Just look at you have the front row of it more than anybody, because you're seeing it in real time.
My kids buy a lot of things representationally. So I love the Mario universe. I love the Pokemon universe. I love this universe. I'll buy a sponge candy thing to represent my SpongeBob love. It doesn't even have to be a toy. But whatever it is, it's just some sort of like, oh, I like SpongeBob, so I'll get this. Versus, I'm going to do something with that toy or that item, and you know what I mean. So it's trophy. It's trophy stuff.
It's worse than trophy.
Because the real world is somewhere else.
It almost sounds retail therapy in a way. There's a layer to that.
Oh, it can be.
It's almost like,
it can be if you let it get that way. Yeah.
Because it sounds like almost because this goes back to, you couldn't give them the muscles because they'd be like, well, what the hell is this? Where if you would have sat them down with a cartoon and then you show them the muscles and the fresh eyes are on them now, and then they go, oh, now I want to have a representation of this. But, and it goes back to what I was going to say, how long does that feeling last for them. Oh, I like Mario. I like the Mario movie. I'm going to get a Mario sponge or a Mario candy or Mario figure. But how long does that exist in their sphere before they move on?
Well, they buy into broader concepts. So my son is Lego, Mario,
creativity,
Nintendo overall, Lego overall, and Minecraft and building type games. So
creativity,
cities, yeah. And so that's where he lives, and so he likes the Mario, so he wishes he had stuff, and so he put the stickers on his wall. He has Minecraft posters. A lot of the Funko SpongeBob stuff.
But that's all. But again, in the case of Funko, that's an easy purchase.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
And they're not so Funko'd out. They actually kind of look like they're supposed to look. So
certain. I always say that
certain brands work.
Google Funko Pop Kool-Aid Man. You would never guess it was a Funko Pop. Some of them work.
It just looks like the Kool-Aid Man.
The only reason why I bring that one up because I once found it in the wild and I had no idea it was a Funko because it worked. It just worked perfectly. Anyways, point is that like it's the bigger issue that exists and what you guys did back then was such a unique kind of approach to toys that we just don't really see today, unfortunately. But it also has to do with a lot of how the market is.
Yeah, the brands have all grown up. The companies have all grown up. IP matters. It's part of your bottom line as a company now.
It's protection.
Yeah,
it's completely
honestly they left it in the hands of a young charismatic kid that believed in himself, and was willing to do the work. They can't afford to do that. They can't afford to do that anymore.
You wanted to build a world because you know what it was with you. You saw what Star Wars was. You saw what Star Trek was. You saw what maybe not so much Batman, but maybe Batman animated, where there was this line that was being drawn of storytelling and characters and your work with Batman and why are people buying these Batman toys? Why would people care about XYZ? And that obviously indirectly affects your way of thinking, where when you're sitting with Transformers, you're going like, well, how come we all know Batman's origin and there's no dispute about that? Regardless of who's doing it.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Yeah. And remember, I'm not a industrial designer, so my at the end of the day, I wasn't making products wasn't my only focus. I had other passions that I brought to the table.
Yeah, and again, that's when you bring something fresh. Someone who's not coming from that world could sometimes give a different perspective, especially in the toy world, where I'm pretty sure your older coworkers, when you first came into the company, Gargoyles going into Batman, when you were going to be going to Gargoyles, but specifically Batman, whoever was in that building that was 10, 15 year senior, obviously weren't comic book readers and enjoying movies in the same way probably you were. And different perspective. Mm-hmm. And different perspectives lead to different conclusions and how the business works. And
I absolutely got hired out of that whole concept. Well, we don't have anyone like this. We'll see what happens.
And didn't that work out great for them? At least you could toot your own horn all you want, but I'll even admit it that it worked out for the best because they could have went the tried and true same route over and over. But then what if no one wanted to show up to that 2007 movie? Oh, it looks like it's just the same thing every time, People need stuff fresh. They need stuff that's different and stuff just like why did Transformers work where G.I. Joe and Battleship didn't, Like there's a secret that was there that and unfortunately they still haven't recognized what that was. I know what that is. If they want more, well, you better give me a call because I'm not giving all of this away for free.
Yeah,
but
I know.
It's just sometimes I feel like that's the biggest thing. Sometimes I give way too much for free. But anyways, the point is that it's something where they were lucky to have you there because you need to have that perspective that's different. And
It was the right place, right time, right people that made that all happen.
It always is that.
Goldner was looking for new and fresh and pushing the brand. No oversight because of the move from Cincinnati to Rhode Island, to kind of, a lot of oversight to slow you down or change your ideas or add other ideas. So I was charismatic enough to just go do things and, present them well. So people were like, well, this is good hands. I was just lucky.
Because you had a passion for science fiction and pop culture. You got to work on science fiction and pop culture when the people who came before you were guys that were toy designers, and they punch that card sometimes. They punch the card, they come in, they come out, and they don't really have a passion for it. And sometimes that shows. And that's when they get burned out, the creativity's not there, and that's when you need those fresh minds that have that kind of stuff. And hopefully that this is how we'll probably end this now, off this long-winded, people are going to love this one. But, I feel that hopefully the future of not just Hasbro, but all toy brands is them recognizing that you have these great IPs. You have these great storytelling elements that you could turn into product and make profit from, but you need to also really change it up every 5 to 10 years. And it's like a dog ear mark on a book. You just got to at this moment, this is when we change everything. And it might not work out, but what's even worse is doing the same thing over and over and not making money. That's even worse, because if you were different, even if it doesn't work out, people still remember it. People always look at Ninja Turtles: The Next Mutation and go, hey, remember when there was a girl turtle? Remember Venus de Milo? People remember that, even if it wasn't successful. And then 5-10 years later from now, people could then look back at that, and dare I say, people now celebrate Jar Jar than hate him, Yeah. Which is crazy when you think about it. So it's better to be different than it is to just be like the biggest criticism that Force Awakens with Star Wars had was it was just more of the same of the old movies. Yeah. Where Phantom Menace, even if it got negative criticism, was different. Yeah.
Well, you don't.
But
one way you're saying this, you can't stay stagnant. You can't be stagnant. Still water gets polluted, right?
It gets bugs. It gets everything.
And some, so we'll see. I think what we really have here is 2 podcasts, but
yeah, we really
we'll
did.
Probably cut out that whole back end and create some sort of
make a separate
point of view of the collector world or something. But
part 2, we'll do part 2 of that. Maybe I'll do that. I'll make it a separate part. But it's something where I'm very curious to see the comments of it. I know that there's certain individuals in the industry that tune in that like listening to this too. So it's something that could be a reflection of what to bring to your higher ups in terms of the future of the brand. It's unfortunate the fracture that does exist, at least on the Hasbro side of things, in terms of the creative side against the pop culture side of it. I'll call it the media side of it, which it used to be under one roof. It's not so much that anymore.
Yeah.
Which is that, and I understand the difficulties that exist because of that, but it's something that if you want to, in an industry where stocks are down right now, and stockholders are going, yeah.
We worked really hard to try to prove that we were great caretakers of brand, whatever that meant, and now they're just toy people, You guys in Rhode Island make toys, and these people over here tell stories, and these people, and it's like, okay, well, you're gonna get half the whatever you need.
Well, and that's the problem, is that you then have, and that's exactly what's going on right now.
Yeah, no, it's how I came into the company. This is how it was set up, and we fought, Daniel, for 15 years to get it to the point we were able to make that movie.
Well, there you go.
And it was, the fight was started before me, before I even started in 95, and I was the last one to be fighting it at the end almost. And they've given it all up.
And look how that worked out.
All up.
the billions of dollars they made, like no joke, billions. I'm underselling. It's more than billions, but because we're not even factoring in the toy stuff, just the movie ticket sales. But the billions of dollars that were made because individuals wanted to do something that wasn't just the norm. And it's almost what the entire podcast exists for, which is look what the past was, learn from it. It's such a cliche thing, but it's so true. You just got to take a step back and just look at what's going on and figure it out. And sometimes you just have the wrong people who don't look to the past. They don't read the right books. They don't read the right, annals of history.
Said a different way, you can hold on to the past so much that you don't grow.
Yeah, no, you look to the past to learn. You don't look to the past to emulate. Oh. There's a difference there. Yeah. You don't look at Rome and go, "Yeah, we're going to do that again."
Business people see it in one way. There was money back then. How do we get back to that?
You could look at Atlantis and Rome and go, "Hey, look at that. Maybe we should do that again." Yeah. Look how that burned down. So it's something where you got to figure out what works, what doesn't work. And march forth to that. I think we've given enough to them today.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it was a great talk. I'm glad we got 2 parts out of this. I think we're going to make this 2 separate segments.
Probably could.
On its own
Probably should.
Yeah, easily. We will. So if you're hearing part 2, it's because there was a part 1 that was talking about 2 glorious Transformer toys, but this was a 2-part segment. So anyways, this is Protoman with the Toy Armada. I'm with the man himself, Aaron Archer. We had a great segment today. And once again, like, comment, subscribe. Check out Aaron's stuff on archermonster.com. Original art, everything like that. Probably by the time you're hearing this, we'll also have the convention scene that we'll be doing with TFCon Toronto in July, and we'll see what happens afterwards with that with some other shows. So stay tuned with that. But as always, thank you for listening. Aaron, thank you for being here.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
And we'll talk again really soon.